I'll take care of that waiting room for you. Don't worry about it.
Welcome, everybody. If you could take your seats, I promise there'll be plenty of time to look at the maps after the presentation. Welcome, everyone. If you could take your seats, we'll start the presentation. I promise there'll be plenty of time afterwards to take a look at the maps. So good morning, good morning, good grief. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you. My name is Dr. Tom Reb. I'm the interim superintendent here in Scituate, and we're really excited to be here tonight to welcome everybody in person as well as on Zoom. And I think everybody can see me on Zoom, and we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. So during the presentation, we will go through a slide deck, and then at the end, we'll have questions, and we'll take questions both from the in-person audience as well as from people on Zoom. So please know that those opportunities will be there for you. So my name, like I said, is Tom Reb. I'm the interim superintendent. And just recently, I went to a new barber about 3 weeks ago in Hanson. And I walked into the barber shop, and there were about 6 or 7 barbers to choose from. And I just checked off any one of them. It didn't matter to me. And a few minutes waiting, young guy came up to me and introduced himself as Jake. We sat down in the barber chair, and we were talking about snow, because that's, of course, what everybody's talking about this time of year. And I was telling him that my son was a senior in high school in 2015, the last time we had a lot of snow like this. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I was a freshman at Norwell High then." And I'm like, "Okay, so you're 25. And so he's going along on my hair, doing a great job. And, we get to talking, and he's like, "So what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Oh, I'm the superintendent in Scituate." And the scissors stopped midair. I'm like, "Oh no." He goes, "You're a 2-hour delay guy." I'm like, "Thanks. Yeah, I am. Thank you. Appreciate that." So my reputation has gone as far as Hanson, Scituate. So I was really happy to hear that. So now I'm going to take a moment and share my screen. So just bear with me for one moment. And welcome to our second public info session for our redistricting. I'm joined this evening by Nicole Brandolini, the chair of the Scituate School Committee, Maria Fenwick, vice chair of the Scituate School Committee, Ryan Lynch, our assistant superintendent, and Matthew Cropper from GIS Consulting. We'll begin the presentation with a bit of a history of the project. I think it's important to understand how we got here, and I'll ask Mrs. Brandolini to provide that history. Welcome, Mrs. Brandolini.
All right. Hi, everyone, families and friends and fellow Scituate sailors. All right. I'm in a little spot here. So the history of this project, as some of you may know already, this history began as far back as 2016. We started with a configuration study. That work was really about whether or not Scituate should move to grade level configuration, whether we should switch to a model that involved more of a K-2 school, and then possibly even 3-4-5 model. Through that work, we discovered that really Scituate values neighborhood schools. That really rose to the top. We did a lot of school visits. We visited other towns. We went as far out as even Western Mass. And we had lots and lots of meetings that really our values, we just kept coming back to that, the core strength of our town, which was siblings wanting to stay together, friends, walking to school, biking to school. Just really those values rose to the top. From there, we entered the next phase of the project, which was a comprehensive analysis of Cushing and Hatherley to assess the level of need in each building. As many of you know, those were pretty severe needs as those buildings had aged gracefully but that they had really reached their full potential and their lifespan. And it only took us 2 rounds to be approved through the MSBA process, and that was completed in winter of 2024. So after that, we successfully passed the ballot vote spring of 2024. And since then, the project has been on time and $14 million under budget, thankfully. And again, back to Dr. Rob's comments about snow, that hasn't set us back at all. So we've been very lucky with that. If you have had a chance to, if you're not a Hatherley parent or family, I encourage you to go over there. It looks awesome, and everything is, the steel is up. It looks quite like a building already. So I encourage you to go on over there if you haven't been by. Also, just wanted to say that as a district and a school committee, we are extremely conscientious that all students receive an equitable elementary experience. As this project is designed to be top-notch, so shall be the experiences at the 2 existing schools. Our aim is to elevate them all equally. Wampatuck has new interior flooring, new ADA compliant nurse's office. Next on deck over there is bathrooms this summer of 2026. New parking lot and portico has been installed. We have accessible mats in the outdoor garden and play spaces. Jenkins has new windows and shades and a brand new roof, and our middle and high schools also continue to receive attention and maintenance as well. As I turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Lynch for an overview of the redistricting process, I will end with this. Though this started in 2016, this piece of the project is one we've always seen coming, no matter what layout of configuration was chosen. And this is a very, very hard step for all of us. I will say I am the wife of a Cushing grad myself and the mom of 4 Cushing kiddos. We 2 are still at Cushing, and 2 now have gone through gates to the high school and have made forever friendships playing baseball, basketball, football, lacrosse, soccer, and also through rec programs and the KFC pool and all around town through just all different programs that they've all been involved in. Their best friends are from Jenkins, Hatherley, Wampatuck, and Cushing. We all come together as one Scituate. Transitions are hard, no doubt about that, but we have lots of runway here, and I trust our teachers, staff, principals, and our district leaders here tonight to guide us through this together. So I'll turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent Lynch to walk us through the next steps here together.
Thanks so much, Chair Brandolini. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Ryan Lynch. I'm the Assistant Superintendent. I was also the principal of the middle school when we opened this building in 2017. So this is proof that we can transition successfully and create great spaces for all of our students. I have one slide. I would reduce my slide to 2 key points. One is geography and one is education. So for geography, this is a reminder of how our town is laid out currently. So just for orientation, the yellow section is Wampatuck Elementary over here on Tilden Road. So we have one elementary school here. Here's Jenkins, sandwiched between Vinyl Lab and First Parish. Hatherley Elementary up on and Vinyl, and then Cushing on Aberdeen. So you notice that when Cushing Elementary closes in 2027 and the new school comes online at the current Hatherley site, that we will have 3 elementary school buildings in Scituate and not 4. So this is the overview. And all of our schools will be located on the eastern part of our town. So that means that we need to change the school zones from where our students attend. So this is a very obvious statement, but it's very important because this clarifies the need for changing, because of the geography, for changing how our school zones are organized. I think it also emphasizes that because of the geographic change, every school will be impacted. So even if someone lives right next door to Jenkins, Jenkins will have a slightly different configuration than they currently do because of the changes happening to all of the elementaries. That's the geography part of my slide. Now is the most important part because I'm the assistant superintendent and I'm really charged with curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and really connected to the educational aspect for all 2,747 students in our district. So at this point, I would also emphasize we do have changes coming to all of our schools, all of our elementary schools, but our job from the beginning was always delivering a high quality education for all of our students and ensuring that every student feels seen, valued, and supported. And with this change to our 4 elementaries to 3, that will continue to be the focus at every school. So we will manage the transition as Chair Brandolini said, but I would just want to say from my standpoint as the assistant superintendent and from all the work that our teachers, principals, counselors, and school staff do, everyone is committed to making sure that students are receiving a high quality education and that they're getting the support that they need. So geographic change, still keeping education as the first goal, and that's the overview I wanted to provide. I will now hand the presentation over to Mr. Matthew Cropper. Matthew Cropper runs Cropper GIS, and he will talk about the process that we followed to reorganize our school zones.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Lynch, and thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. I am Matthew Cropper with Cropper GIS Consulting. It's an honor to be working with your district. You guys live in a very beautiful community. I'm from Ohio. I love Ohio, but this is a great place. It's a really cool place to live and call home. We do this kind of work all over the country. Redistricting is really our main service that we provide. So we probably do about 15 of these a year, 20 a year, and we do this for districts all over the country. We work with districts from 1,500 students all the way up to 140,000 students. And so we bring to the table a lot of experience and expertise in how other communities address challenges and how they tackle this tough job of reassigning households to schools and things like that. We also have a background in GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. It's a mapping tool that allows us to map out the students and know how many students live on any street. So that when we make estimates and we move areas and move from one school to another, we know how many students are being moved, what's the impact. And so it enables us to make really accurate and informed estimates. So like I said, we do this work all over the country. We've done a lot in the New England area. In addition to this, we also do demographic studies, enrollment forecasting work. But we're here to talk about redistricting and for Scituate. So the purpose of tonight is for you to learn about how the process has been working. We have maps. We have 3 copies of maps on the walls over here so that after our presentation, we invite you to go and we'll talk with you around the maps and answer any questions you have. You'll just look for the green lanyard for anybody who are the people who've been working around the table and talking through the options and preparing for tonight's meeting. We want you to review those maps, and then we have a survey that we'd like you to fill out. And everybody should have picked up the one pager over there that the fast facts sheet, and that has a QR code. You can also go to ScituateRedistricting.com and see the survey there. Also, all the materials that we're sharing with you tonight are live. The presentation, the online map now has the options on it. And so all the materials are online for everybody who could not make it tonight, so that they can benefit and look over the work. So we were hired by the district to facilitate this process, develop materials, and help support the process of giving materials and working with the planning group as we kind of look through options and prepare for tonight's public information session, leverage our expertise, empower the public to give you the opportunity to look through the window, see what's happening, to provide input throughout the course of the study, and ultimately work with the district to recommend a redistricting plan to the school committee. This is some of the stuff that we shared at our first public information session, but these are the people, the different stakeholders in this process. So as a consultant, I've talked enough about that, but we have an internal planning team that's made up of district administrators, senior leadership and department staff personnel, people from transportation, and the central office, and even some school committee members working with us and looking through options and things like that. And then that's the group who's been working on drafting scenarios. We've gone through about 5 or 6 different scenarios, or 4 or 5, leading to the 2 that we feel best meet the criteria and our objectives that we're sharing with you tonight. You as members of the public are very important in this, and we look forward to your feedback and getting what you have to say and your opinions on the maps as we look through and review those. The feedback that we're looking for most is the things that we can make use of, or that we can leverage. So things that are more emotional, like I bought my house to go to this school, or my grandparents went to this school, so I wanted my kids to go there. Those are things we really can't do much with. We can't drive a change based off of something like that. But if for instance the boundaries cut off the end of a road in a neighborhood, or if there's some sort of configuration where it's inefficient, from thinking about how buses travel and those types of things, or any inefficiency as it relates to our objectives and to help us get closer to our objectives, those are the kind of feedback that we really are looking for. The school committee is just the high level in this process. Nothing is final until the school committee approves a plan. So everything is draft all the way until it gets approved by the school committee. So everything is subject to change, although we don't anticipate a lot of substantial adjustments at this point. It's possible that there could be some made. So everything is draft. Here's our timeline. You can see we're close to the end. We're on March 4th. We had to reschedule because of your snowstorm last week. And so after this, there's going to be a survey that's going to run through the 15th. And then we're presenting to the school committee on the 30th of March. And then they're anticipated to make a vote on a plan on April 27th of this year. So why are we doing this? I think a lot of you have probably been involved. This has been a long ongoing process of school consolidation. I've been working with the district even at the earlier parts when they were working with the MSBA determining school siting and size. I was working with the MSBA and helping to identify ideal school configurations and sizes and things like that as we kind of work through it. Here now, working on the detail changes, like looking at identifying what streets go to what schools, so much more granular at this point. But as you know, in fall of 2027, you're opening a new elementary school on the Hatherley site, and discontinuing the current Cushing Elementary site. K through 5th graders are going to be at all the 3 remaining buildings, the new school, and then Wampatuck and Jenkins. And so our main objective is to balance enrollment, be mindful of the future growth and things like that for 27, 28, but balance the enrollment of the schools, of the 3 remaining schools. Pre-K students are not factored into our counts because pre-K is they're going to be at the new school from the entire district. So pre-K is kind of set aside, and we're focusing on K-5 as we work through this process, and establishing 3 zones for the 3 buildings that are going to be in effect in 2027. So we always focus on criteria, and this helps us focus on making data-driven decisions and looking at a set of rules or guidelines to determine if it's the viability of moving an area one way or the other. The best plan when it's all said and done is one that adheres to these criteria as a whole as best as possible. We can't focus only on one element of these criteria, because if we focus only on one, sometimes we start to deviate further from the others. I think you'll probably maybe understand that no plan's going to be perfect. There's always some sort of kind of heartburn that you may have with how the boundaries are shaped, but we are limited by where the communities are, how many students live in different neighborhoods, where the schools are located, how the streets travel. And but we focus on these criteria as we kind of determine, and that's balancing utilization, be mindful of the demographics. And so we don't have demographic data in our presentation because what we found was we were measuring demographics for the current and the options, and there's really a negligible impact on demographics of the schools. They all are relatively the same, very similar, representative of the entire district. So there's no imbalance in any demographics in any of the scenarios that we are sharing. Bus efficiency is something that we're looking at, trying to be mindful of how the buses travel, where they can turn around. And we've worked with the transportation office to kind of give us feedback and honing in and making adjustments. We want to minimize the impact on students. We want to try to move as few students as possible while still accomplishing our goals and adhering to these criteria. Try to establish contiguous zones. So right now you have a non-contiguous zone with Hummerock is down in the south, and that's disconnected from the district. And so that's the only non-contiguous zone that you have right now as it relates to the boundaries all being one boundary per school. So it's best practice to try to have one boundary per school, and that helps align us with the other criteria as well. We always want to be focused on the safety of the students. Everything else that we're looking at, bus efficiency, thinking about students crossing major roads, all those types of things are all with the sense and the mindset of making sure that your children get home from school as safely as possible, and there's no minimize any danger that may be there. And so, and with that said, we also use major roads. It's good to use major roads. Sometimes drawing down the center of a major road is best. Other times it's better to pick up both sides of the road if that's how the bus is traveling and how they pick up kids in different parts of your community. And then be mindful of future growth. So not only what we have now, but what we anticipate in the next couple of years. And so we've aged our estimates are aged to the 27-28 school year so that we can see what we're looking at in a couple of years when the schools open. So when you look at the maps, you'll notice some black and white dashed outlines on the map. And let's see here. These little black and white dashed outlines are what we call planning blocks. You'll see them on the maps over there on the walls. Each planning block has an ID number, and it also has the number of students that live within that planning block. That kind of helps you understand how many kids live in different areas of the district. And it also helps our planning team, as well as me, as we kind of work through options. And it allows you to start thinking about options and areas and why there may be an area moved one way or the other without having to have a GIS mapping background and being able to like all the technology at your hands. You can do this without the technology. So you'll see the planning block ID, and sometimes parents, public members tell us what planning block ID they're in, or you could just tell us your general area as when you give us feedback. Anything can help us kind of hone in on where you're talking about if you have a concern or a comment about the options. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Dr. Rab for a second.
Great, thank you very much. Before we talk a little bit about the geography, I wanted to bring to everybody's attention some of the enrollment issues that we have been talking about and the enrollment that's forming the backbone of a lot of what we're talking about. So we all know that we're going from 4 elementary schools to 3. And way back when the MSBA approved this project, they approved it with that understanding. And so there's a couple of terms that you're going to hear throughout the evening and as we go into the project. And I wanted to make sure that everybody has the same definition. So we talk about capacity. We talk about the total number of students who fit in all 4 schools with a class size of 20. So we're using a class size of 20 as sort of our basis. That's a number that we've tried to strive for here in the district, K-5. I know that currently we have some classes lower than that, and we have a few classes higher than that. But all of our numbers are based on class sizes of 20. I think that should provide some reassurance to everybody that we are looking at keeping the class sizes at 20 in all 3 remaining schools. And then we're going to talk about enrollment. Enrollment is the actual number of students enrolled. Later on, you'll hear about utilization, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But if we look at the current situation right now in 25 and 26, if we had every single classroom in all of the buildings being used and had 20 students in every one of those classrooms, and that means every single classroom, we could accommodate 1,780 students. In fact, we have 1,285 students enrolled right now. So the MSBA recognized that, and they said you really have more capacity than you need for 4 elementary schools here in Situate. 3 elementary schools, if we right-size them and we build a new elementary school bigger than Hatherley, but not quite as big as both schools combined, we'll be able to accommodate it. So if you look at estimated utilization, those are actually relatively low right now. We could fit more students in all 4 schools. Now you're saying to yourself, if you've walked through the schools, they look pretty full to me. Well, that's because we do have programs in those buildings and we do have people who are using the classrooms. But in a pure sense of the word, if we used every classroom with 20 students in a room, we'd have 1,780. So because of that, the MSBA told us we need to go down from 4 elementary schools to 3. So, and ultimately, at the end of the day, this is going to enable a district to operate the elementary schools more efficiently without excess space or too much excess space. So how do we go from here to 2 years from now? So if we look at the next word we're going to talk about is utilization. But before then, if we talk about capacity, so right now, we talked about 1,780. The capacity in 27, 28, in 2 years is 1,360. So if we had 20 students in every classroom, now this is going to mean that we're adding 4 or 5 sections in Jenkins. We're adding 4 or 5 sections in Wampatuck. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all 3 schools are going to look very differently, and I'll talk about some of the transition work around that later. But we're going to be adding students to Jenkins, we're adding students to Wampatuck, and then certainly the new Hatherley school is larger than the current one. And it will also make all 3 of our remaining elementary schools approximately the same size in terms of enrollment. So if you look at the 2 options, and I'm putting the numbers behind the options in a moment, Mr. Crawford is going to talk about the geography behind the 2 options. But if you look at 2 years from now, we're anticipating 1,306 estimated enrollment when we bring everybody forward 2 years. And if we looked at utilization, it looks like the buildings are going to be way too full, right? And you say to yourself, why are we moving to 3 elementary schools if our enrollment utilization is going to be at 96%? And that's because that's at 20 students in each room. We know that we could put 21 or 22 students in a classroom and be able to fit more students in those schools. And so these are very acceptable utilization numbers going from 4 elementary schools to 3. We also know we did a 10-year study looking forward to our enrollment. While it's going up a little bit, we don't see any enrollment spikes in the future. There are little grade level spikes here and there, but we know that there are no overall enrollment spikes. So we can very comfortably here go from 4 to 3 and have 3 remaining elementary schools that are roughly the same size. So utilization refers to how close we are to our target class sizes. Our target class size is 20, that's where we want to be. Estimated enrollment is our current enrollment age 2 years. So when we start talking about some of this stuff, it's important to realize that. But that's where we got to the 4 elementary schools to 3. So some people might wonder, where did that come from? That's where this comes from, and that allows us to do this. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Cropper to talk about some of the geography behind this and where we're going to be moving the students.
Thank you, Dr. Rabb. Well, these are your current zones. And as Assistant Superintendent Lynch was talking about, Cushing is coming offline. And so we have to figure out where Cushing students are going to go and also balance the enrollment. It wasn't as easy of an exercise as just having all of Cushing go to the new school that they could not fit in the building with just combining both enrollments. So we had to split enrollment up in order to balance enrollment out. And so let's see here. I am going to skip through this pretty quickly. like I think I've covered this pretty well. We've been meeting with the district numerous times and developing options and developing things in preparation for tonight. Looking at recommending one option, one recommendation to the school committee. And like I said, nothing's final until the school committee votes on a plan. So here are the two options that we are presenting to you tonight. As you can see, Cushing does not have a zone here. And so I'll talk about some commonalities in both options and then talk about some of the differences that we see. I'll start with the south, and you'll see Hummerock area that was formerly in Cushing. That feeds into Jenkins. And so you'll see that southern area is purple. That feeds into Jenkins in both scenarios. Another commonality that you'll see in these maps is the Minot community is feeding into the new elementary school at Hatherley, the Hatherley site, in both of these draft options so far. You'll see Wampatuck does have a similar configuration where it comes in. This is First Parish Road right here that travels in, and then it turns into Beaver Dam Road. But you'll see that we've coming along First Parish Road and picking up communities off of there to feed into Wampatuck. This is Maple and Grove right here that comes up to First Parish Road. And this was feedback that we had from transportation. We did have this kind of cut a little more, but transportation was saying that with ease of being able to loop around, this area would be more ideal in the Jenkins zone as it sits here. You'll also see Country Way is here, and right now this area all is in the Cushing zone. This feeds into Jenkins. So Country Way, up until you get to about First Parish Road, that feeds into Jenkins. And then there is an area off of 3A here that we pick up into Wampatuck, because and then the other areas off of 3A that feed into Jenkins right here down to this is Tack Factory Pond right here. So north of Tack Factory Pond, this area would feed into Wampatuck. Another adjustment that you'll see is Jenkins north of Beaver Dam Road. This is Tickner right in this area. It's kind of, it shoots up north of Beaver Dam Road. That feeds into Wampatuck as well in proposal in option 1. Option 2 differs a little bit in that option 2 doesn't go up Route 3A. So 3A in this area, the communities north of Tack Factory Pond that currently go to Jenkins remain in Jenkins, and then the other community across the street from Deer Commons also feeds into Jenkins in proposal option number 2. You'll see another difference with option 2 is that south of Beaver Dam Road, Linden, Poplar, and Walnut streets would feed into Wampatuck in this scenario. So the scenarios do look similar, but they have some slight differences, mostly along the central part of the district, off of First Parish Road and Beaver Dam Road is where we have some of the differences between option 1 and option 2 as it sits right now. These are just some of the zoom in areas just to see some of the more details for people who couldn't make it, couldn't see the maps. This shows just a couple of zoom features of what option 1 looks like in some of the areas, and then option 2. So you'll see on the maps, there are the data that Dr. Rabb was showing is posted on the maps as well. So we could talk with you about the numbers as well. And it's the same information that we've been evaluating as we look through it. Another piece of data that you'll see is refers to the impacts. And so both options are in the moves that you're making, you're moving about 660 students ballpark in either option. But with that said, we are counting the students at the Hatherley that are going to the new school, because they're going to technically a new school as well as any Cushing student is impacted. So if you take those off of the list, which those students would be impacted anyways, that number gets a lot smaller. So trying to impact the fewest number of students, when you look at this table and you see the blue lines, that tells you how many students are moving from what school to the other. And so you could see how many kids are moving. So for example, Cushing is sending 99 students to Jenkins in option 1. And that's how you would interpret the data. Anything that's in white are the students who are not impacted or not moving. We have a handout online that has 8.5 by 11 that you guys can print off. It has all the data and maps on it that you can print off there. We also have the plot maps online for you if you wanted to look at the detailed large plots. And the online interactive map is updated now, and that has option 1 and 2. So you can click on that or type your address in there, and it'll tell you where you'll go in each option, and it'll tell you if you're impacted or not. All of this information is available on SituateRedistricting.com. So we'd like to talk with you about the maps and answer some questions with you this evening. And we're going to do some Q&A. Then we're going to do a little gallery walk and talk with you around the maps. You'll look for people with the green lanyards, and those are the people who have been at the planning meetings to talk through things. And it's important to note that although one-on-one conversations are good, please put your information in the survey so everybody can benefit from your feedback, okay? The survey is going to run all the way through March 15th, so that's a Sunday. And then on Monday, we're going to pull it down and look at the results and summarize the results. There's also a QR code that you can go, and you also have a QR code on your one-page sheet that you picked up that'll take you directly to the survey. There's also a QR code on that sheet that tells you to get you access to the school committee Zoom meetings as well if you want to watch those. Presentation is on March 30th, and that's basically all I have for now. Would you like to some closing remarks, sir?
Thank you very much. I'm just going to take a quick moment and stop sharing here. Well, maybe I'll do that a little later. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the transition between now and September 2027. I want everybody on Zoom and everybody here to know that we're committed to the transition to the 3 elementary schools, and we're committed to the social emotional piece of this. Right now, we're talking a lot about geography. We're talking a lot about curriculum. But one of the reasons that we're going out early and we're making these decisions early is so that we have an entire school year next year, 26, 27, to figure it out and merge the schools together and bring people together, bring students together, bring faculty together, and do all of the things that we need to do to make the transition successful. And we want to take the entire year to do that. Right now, all 4 elementary schools are writing their school improvement plans for next year. And they have a goal in their school improvement plans for this transition. And so they're taking very seriously the steps that they're going to do. We already have a pretty good transition plan. Our 5th grade to 6th grade transition here to Gates is a pretty well-established program. The students come here for visits. They come here to learn about the school. They learn about their schedules. They learn about what the school is all about. We'll be doing the same thing among the 4 elementary schools next year, as we transition to 3. So please know that we're very committed to that transition. I know from experience that also students are very resilient in the transition. All 3 schools are going to seem bigger than they are now. Even Jenkins and Wampatuck will be seen bigger because we're going to have more students in them. Students want to know where they need to go, where their classrooms are. We're going to make the building smaller for them in the transition so they know the part of the building that they have to be in. That's a successful way to help them transition. We'll also be talking to the PTOs in the 4 elementary schools and asking them to help us with transitions in terms of different kinds of events and highlights that they can do during the year. We're also committed to making sure that we have a very clean way to close the 2 schools, close Cushing and Hathley, and commemorate all the good work that's been done at those schools over the years. So please know that we are committed to that transition and we look forward to it. And it's one of the reasons that we're making this decision now, so that we can be ready to go next year and use the entire year to help people with the transition. So at this time, I'd like to take some questions, but I will say this, and Mr. Cropper alluded to it a little bit. You've heard a lot of information this evening. And for many of us, it's the first time you've heard this, and it may seem very overwhelming. Anytime you receive new information, you kind of get that rush of feeling that it's overwhelming and right away, and I don't understand. Give yourself a little time. One of the reasons that we are putting the survey out there, and you can go online and click on the survey, and we're opening it up until March 15th, is because we really want you to take some time to live with these choices. Live with option one, live with option two. Tell us what you think. We want to hear what you think, but we do want you to be able to take some time. So we're going to leave it open till March 15th, and we're going to read everything that is put in the comments. But now I'll certainly take some questions. We'll direct questions, whoever is the best person to answer them, and we'll do our best, and we'll go back and forth between the in-person audience and the Zoom audience. So I'll start with 2 questions in person, and what I'll do is I'll just repeat the question into the microphone so that everybody can hear it. On Zoom, you won't have any trouble hearing them, I promise you. So, for sure.
What's saying to it past, it would be great to know that that's being holistically, proactively addressed with the town. I know a lot of parents have to, on their own, try and contact W and crosswalks. Those efforts aren't always successful. So it'd be great to have that all planned and worked out in advance at your work.
No, thank you for saying that. So there's 2 different pieces to that conversation. I know that in terms of crosswalks and making sure that they work, that's absolutely part of the plan. There's no question about it. When we have the new pathway, there's different things we need to do on and vinyl roads to make sure that is. Oh, of course, sure, of course. Sure, of course. So the question was, have we considered making sure that for walkers and bikers, there's crosswalks available to all 3 schools now that we're going to have additional, enrollment at all 3 schools, and then also consideration around sidewalks. So I wanted to take the question into 2 parts. The first part being crosswalks. That's something we're absolutely looking into, particularly at the new school, and making sure that there is appropriate, entrances from the street into the new school, making sure that there's crosswalks on the property of the new school. All of that has been taken into consideration. In terms of existing situations, I know at Jenkins, they are doing some work around, making that more easily bikeable and so forth. In terms of sidewalks, that's a separate committee in town. So I'm going to hesitate to go there. I apologize. But in terms of installing new sidewalks, I do know that there's a sidewalk study committee. That might not be the name of it, but there's a sidewalk study committee in town. So in terms of sidewalks, I would defer to the town. I defer to the town administrator because there is a planned movement in terms of how sidewalks are being added in Situate, and I'm not part of that. But in terms of the immediacy of the schools themselves, and I know we did talk when we were talking about some of these options, we know that there are ways to get to the schools kind of through the woods in different ways like that. We did kind of think of that as we were going through this. So I know that's not a complete answer, but it's what we can control. Sure.
Would the bus fee be reevaluated because we've known just by where we live that people's is, and it's about a mile away. So obviously that would be a fee that I pay for my kids to go there, but there are no sidewalks going from my house to Jenkins, so it doesn't seem fair that you cannot, I wouldn't send them to school. You know what I mean, by walking there.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So the question was, are bus fees going to be reevaluated as we look at the new configuration? For example, if I live a mile from school and there are no sidewalks between my house and the school, is there a way to take that into consideration? So I have to admit, we have looked at transportation itself in terms of the distance from the school to the different configurations, but I have not looked at the less than 2 miles or how that would impact the bus fees. One of the nice parts about going out early is I can certainly do that and take a look.
About the number of Hatherley students who are going to be districted out of Hatherley, and if there are any, like the conversation at the very beginning was always the Cushing Hatherley school, and then very quickly it's not Cushing school at all. Based on about 100 students, Cushing will be allowed to go to new school. But that's one of my questions. My other question is about the existing schools, so Wampatuck, particular where my will likely end up. Are there going to be like modular classrooms, or is there truly space for every child to be in a real building? Because that really does make a difference for everyone. So
thank you. I'll repeat the question, but let me repeat the second question first because it's the easier one to answer. So right now there are four preschool classrooms at Wampatuck. The question was, does Wampatuck really have the space to add the 100 kids that we were talking about? Yes, it does, because there are 4 preschool classrooms right now being utilized at Wampatuck. Those are going to move to the new building. So the capacity of the new building is really closer to 560, 580. It's the 460 we were talking about, plus another 100 preschools. We also have a capital article on this year's town meeting next month on April 13th to expand Wampatuck if we need to. So we have 2 options we're putting forward that would happen next summer. One would be to add a 5th classroom, which would be right at the end of that preschool area. That wouldn't necessarily mean adding to the building, but it would be reconfiguring that area, which right now is offices. And then we actually have a larger planned progress that would add a 6th classroom to Wampatuck. So we're taking that into account, and we'd have that ready to go if we needed it. So the 6th classroom would tack on to the very end, and it would be additional square footage, but we're planning for that, and we know we have the space for it, right next to the garden there. It's kind of in the corner. So that question I can address. I think what's happened in terms of originally, because I was here 2 or 3 years ago, and the question was, this is a Cushing-Hathley project, how are students going to move? We didn't know a lot of the geographics at that point. We didn't know exactly where everything was going to move. We didn't, honestly, and I think we really wanted to be clear that the big message then was both schools are closing. We have to go from 4 to 3. Now that we've dug into the geography, the reality is, Hathley kind of is on that one end, Cushing's in the middle, and the geography just kind of falls into line. So the question was, why aren't more students going to Hathley from Cushing? We kind of thought there'd be more kids going from Cushing to Hathley. But at the end of the day, it really falls down to geography, and it falls down to bus routes. We took a real careful look at what the bus routes would look like, trying to keep any bus route under 40 minutes and even actually shorter than that if we can. And so those were the 2 reasons. So as we looked at the geography, the reality of it became very apparent. And we knew that, we would be moving certainly students from Cushing to the new Hathley, but we're also going to be moving kids to Wampatuck and Jenkins as well. And that's why we're so committed to the curriculum. Mr. Lynch mentioned that earlier. We're committed to making sure the curriculum is the same at all 3 buildings. We're also committed to capital improvements at Wampatuck and Jenkins. Mrs. Brandolini mentioned those at the beginning of the meeting. We put a new roof, new windows on Jenkins recently, and we've been doing a lot of improvements to Wampatuck. Let me take a couple of questions online.
Dr. Rapp, you have no virtual hands raised.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience? And we're going to stick around too. So if you have personal questions you want to talk to us, let's go right over here in the front and then we'll come. All right, that's fine. Sure. Okay, we're all here. Yep.
I'm at Cushing right now, and I can tell you when I was 5th grade, she was doing band in a back hallway. So to say that there's room at the schools now that we're not at capacity, like when you're in the buildings with specials, band, everything else, lunches and that schedule, I just don't see how there's space for more capacity. And then to go from 4 to 3, I understand we can add to Wampatuck, but Jenkins is not going to be that much busier. So like, where is band going to happen? Is library now being short? Like, and you don't have to comment on it. I just want to echo her statement to say, I just don't see how it's possible. And I will admit, come to some of these meetings early on, But everyone keeps saying like we're not expecting a first enrollment, but I feel like new families are coming to Situate. Like, was the census ever used to see the numbers coming? Because you don't expect it, but like, did you actually look at the census to say like this is actually not going to happen? Because my concern is, yes, we're going to start at 20 students per classroom, but then it was mentioned, well, that might go to 22. Like, is it just going to slowly keep creeping up, and we're going to be back in the same boat?
Right now, that's not the indication. So we have, through the New England School Development Council, we can go 10 years out, and they're telling us that we're not going to see huge jumps that way. And that's, that's what we have in terms of the, available data. In terms of, you're right, at Cushing right now, it's packed. There's no room. At Hathley right now, there's no empty classrooms. But there are available classrooms at Jenkins. When we move the preschool out of Wampatuck, there will be 4 classrooms there. And we're building a whole separate preschool wing at the new building. We're not even addressing that. So that's where that space comes from. I'm not trying to suggest that there's room at Hathley right now at all. Okay? But the new building, one of the nice things about building new is we have some dedicated spaces. So there is a dedicated music room, there's a dedicated art room, there's a dedicated gym, that helps in terms of the plan. So, while I can't guarantee everything, the expectation would be that music is being done in the music room or not in the hallway. I think that's absolutely part of why we're doing this and making the curriculum consistent across the board. I promise we'll get over here. I promise. Okay. All right.
Grandfathering for fifth grade, especially like she was gonna get redistricted, they would work with families, especially the fifth graders. And now I feel like there's no problem.
So it's similar to the other. So the question was grandfathering fifth graders. 2 or 3 years ago, when we had some of the open forums, we talked about the possibility of maybe being able to grandfather fifth graders. Again, now that we have seen everything being built, we know that there's 4 sections of fifth grade in the new building. There really isn't an opportunity to do that. We can put 4 sections in the new building, but at the end of the day, there's no way to do that and maintain class size evenly across the district. So, let's say we did that and the new school had fifth grade classrooms of 26 and everybody else had fifth grade classrooms of 18. I don't think that would be acceptable. We don't think that's acceptable, even if it's, a grandfathering situation. So we're really focusing not so much on the grandfathering, and we're focusing on maintaining average class size of 20. And that became the overarching theme for us. Having said that, like I said, we're very, very much committed to the transition. I understand it's going to be tough for fifth graders to move after having made friends. That's why I also think it's okay that there's going to be 80 or 90 or 100 kids going to the new building. They'll have friends going with them. They're not going by themselves. We're also starting to talk to the staff. And so we know that the staff at Cushing and Hathley are also going to be moving around as well. We're aware of that, and we're aware that students are going to be going. We want to make sure that the students have not only friendly friend faces, but friendly adult faces in the new building as well. So we're aware of both of those issues. We're working with the staff right now who have the same questions you do at their level among the staff.
The follow-up to the Wampatuck, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but the preschool is coming out of Wampatuck. So those classrooms will all be empty for this change because they're moving over to Hadley. So those are your open classrooms.
Exactly. That's the capacity of Wampatuck. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So have you been working with the planning board to know actually how many new houses are being built? I know there's 24 going up by Old Smoking Bucket, I think, that are in that area that you were sort of maybe figuring out where they're going, but I know those are. So is that part, have you been working with?
It was part of, well, anybody can answer it, but it was part of the original discussions 2 or 3 years ago. So they knew, as much as they knew at that time. It's hard to predict necessarily much further. 24 houses isn't necessarily going to throw any of these metrics off. We haven't heard of a huge spike somewhere that would throw it off. We certainly know there's things being built, but nothing that's going to impact these numbers long term. We're trying to do this from a generational perspective. We don't want to do this again in the next 15 to 20 years. So we're trying to really make these decisions, knowing what we know, knowing what's coming, whatever we do know is coming. so that we don't have to do this again. And this is really something that can settle in for a generation of our students.
It is interesting that mine is going back to Hathaway, because people may not know that mine, it used to be part of Hathaway, and they got moved with a past redistricting. So it's sort of going back to the old tradition of what it was before. So it's sort of interesting to see that the way it used to be.
Thank you. A lot of this came down to geography. It really did. Any more online questions, Seth, since we had a bunch in person?
Dr. Rabb, you have no virtual hands raised.
Okay, thank you.
Life expectancy of that. I have been coming to these meetings since we first started talking about this, so I remember the conversations that were like, you know, we put some money into the envelope of the building, the structure, where we haven't shored things up with the other schools. And so I remember the conversations that sort of proposed shutting down Cushing and Haverly and building the new school. But I wonder, as we talked about, you know, I know that ECC, my kids have all been to the ECC along with that. I know that there's for classrooms. I also know that they're around the gym, which is not, we have that Cushing. For my kids are currently, or some of them are. And I know that that's not an ideal situation. So when we talk about Wampatuck, like how much longer do we expect that building to live? And does it make, you know, like at some point, I imagine this conversation of what do we do about aging Wampatuck, which is same age as these two buildings that have been taken away. Like, you know, how much money is in the budget, and does it make sense to do that?
So what I can say is it absolutely does, because I think what we've noticed at Cushing and Hathaway is because we didn't do that, we got into the situation. And so we have been working on a progressive capital plan, and Wampatuck and Jenkins have been part of that capital plan all along. So, you know, we mentioned repaving the parking lot. We mentioned this summer, we're going to be repainting the interior of the whole school. So it will get a real facelift, not so much structurally, but it'll get a facelift in terms of painting. We're also renovating those preschool rooms. So as part of the project, if we're going to add a 5th or even a 6th classroom, part of that project is also renovating those preschool rooms to make them, you know, just better. So I would hesitate to put a number. I couldn't tell you, you know. But I think what we're doing now is we're trying to avoid the mistakes of the past. And so every year, the school and the commitment from the town is a significant 7-figure capital commitment, at least the last 3 years I've been here. There's been over a 7-figure capital commitment for all the schools. You know, even at the high school, you know, we just put a new roof on the high school a couple of years ago. We're looking toward air conditioning the 2nd floor of the high school a couple of years from now. We know that a project of this scope and magnitude, you know, the next one is 30, 40, 50 years from now. So we know that. So we're doing what we can to avoid the mistakes that were made at Cushing and Hathaway so that we can keep these buildings online. And we're looking at, you know, we're evaluating the structure of the roof. We're evaluating all of that on a regular basis to make sure that we're on top of it. Sure.
Yeah, so I was just wondering when we might hear a little bit more about this transition plan. It's good to hear that there's already a robust transition plan for kids from elementary up to Gates, but obviously like this is a very different transition with kids moving into an existing school community and losing friendships they had in the past.
Great question. So the elementary principals are going to be presenting their school improvement plans on March 30th. Somebody nod your head. No, April 27th. So at that time, on April 27th, they'll be presenting their transition plans as part of their school improvement plans. Each of them has a goal for that. So I would urge you to listen to that, and those will be recorded. But, you know, I've read a couple of drafts of those transition plans, and they're very, very specific in terms of what they want to do for the students. I was very impressed.
I have 2 questions, but the first one's really easy. Are the bus routes or proposed bus routes available in the maps online so we can take a look at that in the back?
Not yet. We haven't quite that far yet.
Is that something that could be shared as we're thinking about the impact of buses and crossing roads and things like that? And that's one of the facts that we want us to take into account.
Sure, we can look into it. I don't know that I can get down to all 17 bus routes, but I think we can certainly look into bus routes. Excuse me, I give up my New York background. bus routes, we can look at them. And at least what we have done is we've looked at the outliers, and we're really trying to keep any route under 40 minutes. And so then, and significantly under that, that would be like an extreme. So we are at least, we've looked at them without actually plotting them all out.
The second one is more of a future strategy for potential redistricting or not, right? I understand that we want this to be the plan for the next 10 or 15 years. If one of the schools is at 22 and one's at 18 or 26, is there a threshold that will reevaluate this to make sure that the equity that exists at the start kind of continues?
Sure.
Is there a process and a commitment to doing that when we hit that threshold?
I'll commit to the process. The threshold really comes down to class size and what we see moving forward. In any given 1 year, you might have a class of 23 or 24 because there's a bubble in a year, and that we're going to ask everybody to sort of survive. We do that now. But if we see a trend where there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 years of that, then that would be a trigger for us. You know, if we said, all right, we're looking 3 years ahead, 4 years ahead, there's going to be 24, 25 in a class. I think that would be a trigger for us to look around the edges of some of the work that we're doing and see what we might be able to do.
When you do these redistricting projects, how many of them are related to a new school coming online? And when that happens, do you see movement across those districts that we should anticipate?
So you're on camera.
I'd say 30–40% involves consolidation or building a new school or both. We also work a lot in districts who are just who have a lot of rapidly declining enrollment, and they're like big urban districts, and they're just looking to reduce their footprint and the number of schools they have. These plans typically hold for a long time. We've been doing this is our 21st year in business, and we've never had a district come back and say, oh, blown out of the water, it didn't come out as we had anticipated. So like Dr. Rabb said, you've got ebbs and flows in class sizes. Sometimes, like you have a couple right now in Scituate where you have a smaller class size and then an abnormally large class size at a particular grade level. As those age through, you have to adjust. And so sometimes you'll have higher and sometimes lower. But like Dr. Rabb said, I think he said it perfectly. It's just if it's a sustained trend, that's something you have to address. But they do have the setting the foundation with new boundaries like this is typically very stable and allows you to sort of to have these and manage enrollment at a good balance for the future. So
I would just add too that inside our schools currently, we manage this problem or challenge every year right now. So right now there's 2 sections of second grade in Wampatuck. Is that correct? Yes, and then some grades have 4 teachers. So internally with our staff, we manage that consistently. So there is a process already. Sorry. Oh, yeah. So sorry. So we manage. So right now that already happens. So once you bring a school online, and then we would in the new school, the number of teachers at a grade level could flex to meet that demand. So I just want to point out that the challenge that you identified is a good one, and it's one we manage right now because if you look at the grade levels right now, it's already happened. So.
This is a question maybe more to the transition plan that will be discussed coming up, but I believe at the last Christian PTO meeting, you had mentioned that now that we know kind of what the zone will be, there is a potential for kids to start at their new school this year. Is that still a possibility, and how should we think about that, or is that kind of to be figured out?
It's really to be figured out. It's one of those things that I have to watch it really closely. When I said that, I was thinking about kindergarten. I was thinking about maybe somebody who didn't ever come to the schools and this is their first chance coming to school. I wasn't considering like parents with existing children at the school. That would be really hard to do, if not impossible, you know, So what we'll do now is thank all of our presenters. We're going to stick around, find people in the green lanyards. And if you have any questions, you want to talk to us individually, I would urge everyone, please, and everyone online, please fill out the survey. It's open until March 15th. Take some time, fill it out, give us the information that we need to make the right decision on April 27th. Thank you very, very much.
Dr. Rabb, I'm ending this. You all right with that?
Thank you very much, Seth.
All right. Have a good night.